Hey there, folks. USDA has announced their application window for 2024 for funding through the ReConnect program for deployment of rural broadband services. Be right back with more. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Z-Quorum with Broadband Deployment News. So USDA ReConnect is a program that's been going on for quite some time. That provides funds for rural broadband deployments. USDA, Department of Agriculture, so lots of farm kinds of interests, but also just rural areas in general. This is something that's open to any company really that would be providing or could be providing internet services, a private company, municipality, states, tribal, co-ops, whatever. So this is open where you can apply to this. And I've linked to this. This is in the Federal Register. This is the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Link to that in this video here, as well as to the ReConnect site if you want to get more information on that. But I was going to go through real quickly just some points in this Notice of Funding Opportunity. And if you've done ReConnect before, a lot of it's very similar. Over time they've increased the requirements as far as speeds. It's now 100 megabits per second symmetrical that you've got to be able to provide. And you've got to provide it to everybody in the proposed service area that you are looking at. One thing that's new, which is not surprising at all to me, was a cybersecurity requirement. So keep that in mind as you look at applying for this. That's something that you need to have in place or be able to demonstrate that you've got cybersecurity in place that would protect you and your subscribers. And as you're thinking about that, as we go through this, we do provide that, can provide that for you, so we can do security assessments, because you got to know what's not secure first. We can, once we look at the state of that, we can help you with anything that you need as far as getting your broadband network, your internal network, whatever, secure, from endpoint detection response to managed cybersecurity, other additional managed cybersecurity services like Security Operations Center as a service, where you don't need to have the people that watches all that. That's probably the most expensive part of cybersecurity. Is you can get everything in place, but then you really have to kind of keep on top of it for it to actually work properly. And that's the difficult part. But we come in and do everything for you, can provide reports, whatever you need. So just keep that in mind if this is something you'd be applying for. So let's take a look at this NOFO here. So you see this is fiscal year 2024, USDA, the ReConnect program, the dates. So beginning March 22nd, 2024 is when the applications can be submitted through the RUS online application portal. And that goes through just before midnight on April 22nd Eastern Time. So that's your application window. It's got information on here where you would submit those. Contact information in here. Let's see, I wanted to look at, this is the Rural Development Key Priorities. So assisting rural communities, I guess, to recover economically through more and better market opportunities and through improved infrastructure, ensuring all rural residents have equitable access to rural development programs and benefits from RD-funded projects, and reducing climate pollution and increasing resilience to the impacts of climate change through economic support to rural communities. So Democratic administration, that gets thrown in there. I'm never sure why some of these things get thrown into these things. And we'll see a lot about labor too. So I always wonder about, where are the priorities? Is it to get broadband deployed, or is it to do some of these other ancillary things? But I'm going to scroll down and just look at some specific points here. So system requirements must be capable of delivering 100 meg symmetrical to every premises at the same time. I'm assuming that means every premises in the proposed funded service area, or the PFSA. So every premises, I guess it would be. And then at the same time, so I'm reading that as if you've got a lot of demand on your network, you need to be able to support that. Although I don't know if any broadband operator can actually do that. What was that in the old days? Trying to remember. It's like the Super Bowl or something like that, where you've got all kinds of people maybe streaming something at the same time. And that's when, broadband operators are generally not prepared for that, because they prepare for a large number of customers that are doing something at the same time, but not everybody. So that's just something, I guess if you're providing gig service and everybody can get 100, then maybe you're doing okay. Federal broadband or federal award information, available funds. There's information about that. 100% loan. So basically the way USDA ReConnect works is you can get 100% loan, or you can get 100% grant, or you can get a combination where you do 50-50. So for 100% loan, up to $200 million is available for loans. That's in total. I don't think that's to a particular organization. You can do 50-50 loans, and there's up to $100 million available for that, and up to $100 million is available for grants. For $100 million for loans, $100 million for grants. 100% grant, up to $150 million is available for grants at 100%. 100% loan applicants or applications will be processed and awarded on a rolling basis. In the event 2 loan applications are received for the same proposed funded service area, the application submitted first will be considered first. That seems fair. The interest rate for 100% loan will be set at a fixed 2%. It's a good deal. Principal and interest payments will be deferred for 3 years. Another good deal. The amortization period will be based on the composite economic life of the assets funded plus 3 years. A 50% loan, 50% grant interest rate for the 50% loan component will be set at the Treasury rate for the remaining amortization period at the time of each advance of funds. Principal and interest payments will be deferred for 3 years. Again, that's nice. The amortization period will be based on the composite economic life of the assets funded plus 3 years. So that's the same. Applicants may propose submitting cash for the loan component at the time of the application, and funds must be available in the applicant's operating accounts at the closing of the award. So I guess that's what it's saying is you can get a 50% grant, and then instead of actually taking out a loan, you can have the cash to cover that. 100% grant, applicants must provide a matching contribution of cash equal to at least 25% of the cost of the overall project. The applicant must clearly identify the source of the matching funds, even if the match is provided from the applicant's operating accounts. All matching funds must be deposited into the applicant's operating accounts. RUS has agreed to modify the grant agreement to permit awardees to deposit the required matching and other required funds into the pledged deposit account on a rolling basis as needed. So I think that's a change where maybe prior to that, maybe you had to have everything in one account all at once. So if you've done ReConnect before, you may recognize that that's maybe a little bit better term for you, or terms, I should say, in getting that. Eligibility, as I mentioned, if you click on that, it's pretty much everybody. If you're a company, private, public, city, state, co-op, whatever, tribal organization, you are eligible basically to apply. For a service area to be eligible for funding under this notice, at least 90% of the households in the area must lack sufficient access to broadband as defined in this notice, meaning 100 by 100. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it's 25 by, I think, is it 100 by 100? Well, 100 by 100 is what you have to deploy, but they're looking at unserved as 25 by 3. So I think what they're saying is if anything less than 25 by 3. In addition to identifying areas that lack sufficient access to broadband, applicants must submit evidence that sufficient access to broadband does not exist for 90% of the households in that proposed area. Identify all existing providers in that area and indicate what level of service is being provided. Applicants are required to use the FCC's broadband funding map as part of this process. If these areas are found to have sufficient service beyond the threshold, the application may be rejected. And I'm assuming there's, everybody is able to challenge the FCC maps right now. So the current map is, the data is as of June of last year. The map that's going to be coming out during this process, probably during this application period. I think the next map will come out, which will show the challenges that have been accepted as far as major challenges. So that would be more accurate at that point. Areas that have an enforceable commitment at the time of publication of this notice are ineligible for ReConnect funds. However, if an applicant submits evidence that the entity that received the enforceable commitment has not deployed broadband service as required by the awarding agency's regulations or award documents, the agency may consider such area eligible for funding. Areas with current broadband service from only satellite or unlicensed wireless facilities, or which have an enforceable commitment associated with only satellite or unlicensed wireless facilities, are eligible for funding under this notice. So that's very similar to BEAD program, where if an area has licensed spectrum, fixed wireless, let's say, then it is considered reliable broadband and may not, in most cases, I think, be eligible for funds. But satellite, same thing here with satellite. It's not, doesn't matter that Starlink's up above, that is not, and that area is still eligible if it's unserved. And here's what I was talking about, the cybersecurity risk management. So It's a policy of the United States to strengthen the security and resilience of its critical infrastructure against both physical and cyber threats. Applicants selected for federal funding under this notice must demonstrate, prior to the signing of the award agreement, a concerted effort to consider and address cybersecurity risks consistent with the cybersecurity performance goals for critical infrastructure and control systems directed by the National Security Presidential Memorandum on improving cybersecurity for critical infrastructure control systems. I'm sure there's a huge acronym for that. Or the current draft of these goals found at CISA.gov, blah, blah, blah. You see the link there, or there's a URL there. So it doesn't mention NIST, NIST framework, which is what they reference in the BEAD program as well as EACAM. So I'm surprised there, but this probably got very similar kinds of requirements as far as cybersecurity and what you need to have in place. Speaking of EACAM, it mentions that here. So EACAM had that cybersecurity requirement added this most recent round, which started in January. So those who were doing EACAM had to get cybersecurity in place and have plans for that. So a lot of folks that would be maybe applying for USDA ReConnect funds could also be EACAM recipients. EACAM is more about ongoing support for these really rural areas where it's high cost just to provide service ongoing. So even if once the network's built, it's still a high cost area because you've got these far-flung areas, very few houses per mile, or several miles per house kind of thing, where it's just expensive. You've got a lot of infrastructure out there, not a lot of homes to cover the costs of that infrastructure. You've got to do truck rolls that are longer, more gas, more time out in the field. So it's very expensive. So EACAM, kind of a continuation of Connect America Fund and some other things. EACAM provides that ongoing support. It's not really for building the networks. It's more, I think, for coming out of the USF funds, more for providing ongoing support for these really high-cost areas. So EACAM had a cybersecurity requirement. So it could be that those that have just recently said, yeah, we want to do the new EACAM. It was kind of the enhanced EACAM that has the cybersecurity that they already set on cybersecurity. But if you're not, again, you need to get that in place. And again, check that out. You can go to zquorum.com/cybersecurity and learn all about that. And again, I linked to that also in the description of this video. It mentions here again EACAM. So the applicants that are receiving EACAM funding are only eligible for a ReConnect 100% loan, but not grant funding. So if you are EACAM, you can't get a grant, but you can get a loan. RUS will determine the eligibility of applicants that are recipients of other FCC Universal Service Fund high-cost support programs on a case-by-case basis in accordance with the applicable high-cost support program rules. So again, that would be not the enhanced EACAM or just the ACAM or the Connect America basically thing, the original one. Let's see what else we got. Scroll down quite a ways here. Application review information, evaluation criteria. Application for 100% loan. Applications are not scored or ranked. Application for a 100% loan. Oh, here it is. 100% loan applications are not scored or ranked competitively because basically you're getting a loan, right? So you're going to pay that money back. Applications will be processed and awarded on a rolling basis. Then we've got for 100% grants, 100% grant applications and combination loan grant applications will be scored on the following criteria. So as you put in your request for a grant, just realize that they've got the scoring criteria in here. You got rurality, I guess that's a word, of the proposed funded service area. So how rural is it? So that, and it's got some information in here about how many inhabitants and how many miles you are from the various city or town, that kind of thing. Economic need of the community, that's 20 points. So you had 25 points for how rural, 20 points for economic need, and it talks about that there. Affordability, similar to BEAD, at least one low-cost option offered at speeds that are sufficient for a household with multiple users to simultaneously telework and engage in remote learning. And that's not as fast as you would imagine, because you can actually have have several people on a Zoom call in the family, and for less than 100 megabits per second. So certainly 100 by 100 symmetrical is more than fast enough for that, and even lower speed than that. So if you want to have a a low-speed option that can support that. Well, you have to have that, but you can determine what that would be. Labor standards, 20 points. And it talks here about, this is really, it sounds like it's primarily talking about tribal lands, those kinds of things. And then it's got just strong labor standards. It says whether workers, including employees of contractors and subcontractors, will be paid wages at or above the prevailing rate, whether the project will be covered by a project labor agreement, and or whether the project will use a unionized project workforce. So again, being that this is a Democrat administration, you're seeing a lot in here about labor. So these are just additional, they're scoring it based on that. Again, it would be good to make sure everybody's paid fairly, but in a competitive market, I think they would be. But I think this kind of takes away from, how rural is the area, how much need is there in the area. Demonstrate compliance with and plans for future compliance with labor and employment laws, talks about that. Plan to recruit and support an appropriately skilled, trained, and credentialed workforce, including by contractors and subcontractors. Obviously, you do want a skilled workforce, but I think, again, they're pushing the idea that labor unions have the most skilled workforces. So they're really leaning heavy on this with the points there. Tribal areas, 15 points. You can read about that. Local governments, nonprofits, and cooperatives, 15 points. So similar to, I think, the BEAD program, they would like to have those that can maybe provide services for less cost to consumers than a for-profit company would, because a for-profit company has to make a profit, whereas a not-for-profit like a city or a co-op just needs to break even. But they still need to pay the people there. So you're breaking even, but you're not, you're having to, you've got all of your costs and your expenses, but you don't have that extra bit that's going to shareholders or to the owners, that kind of thing. Socially vulnerable communities, 15 points. Net neutrality, 10 points. It mentions net neutrality. The FCC has put forward some net neutrality rules that will probably be knocked down by the Supreme Court that says they don't have the ability to do that because of, it's not really mentioned in the Communications Act that broadband service would be a Title II service. It's really indicated as it's the Title I. So that's probably not going to go through, but they can certainly require in here that service providers would commit to these things, which I think, again, these are the kinds of things that would be addressed by the current regulations that we even have in place through the FCC and working with the FTC if they find that something looks fishy. But they say you want to commit that your network will not block lawful content, applications, services, or non-harmful devices subject to reasonable network management. Certainly no ISP wants to do that. They want their consumers, their subscribers, to get access to everything that's legal, as long as they're not doing something that is impacting everybody else's experience. And if they are, then that would be a reasonable network management that you would take there. Impair or degrade lawful internet traffic on the basis of internet content, application, or service, or use of a non-harmful device, subject to reasonable network management. And again, they should probably not want to do that, although that was one of the things that happened way back when, before net neutrality laws were ever put in place. And they're not in place now. They were put in place by the Obama administration, taken out by the Trump administration, and they're trying to be put back in place by the Biden administration. But way back when, there were some operators that were throttling certain kinds of traffic because it was really causing a significant impact on their network, and they saw it as coming from people that were not customers. And what that was BitTorrent, because at that time, a lot of BitTorrent was peer-to-peer, P2P file sharing, where somebody would have some kind of pirated software or movies, those kinds of things, copyright infringements. They'd put them on their PC, acting like a server, and then other people around the world, coming from, a lot of people coming from different ISPs, would be downloading that. So it was impacting the operator that had that stored on their servers, and it was impacting the other operators that people were. It was really more those that had customers or subscribers who were hosting that content, because then they had people from all over the planet downloading stuff, meaning it was taking a lot of upstream traffic capacity as these people were downloading something. These were not customers of that ISP. These were people that were basically downloading something from what was essentially a server that a residential subscriber was running through BitTorrent. But then later, it was realized that BitTorrent started to be used more and more for valid reasons like gaming software updates. So the gaming software companies, for example, would put their updates on BitTorrent and people couldn't get to it because it was being throttled or blocked, that kind of thing. So, but that was all taken care of without the net neutrality regulations. But that would be one situation. There was another one where there were some internet service providers that provided video, IPTV services, streaming kinds of stuff on their network, and they kind of wanted to deprioritize other streaming services. And that was handled through, again, the FCC and current regulations and whatnot without net neutrality rules. But that's the kind of situation where that might be something that somebody might want to do. Engage in paid prioritization, meaning the management of a broadband provider's network to directly or indirectly favor some traffic over other traffic, including through use of techniques such as traffic shaping, prioritization, resource reservation, or other forms of preferential traffic management, either in exchange for consideration, money or otherwise, or from a third party, or to benefit an affiliate entity. And there was some of this going on as well, again, prior to the net neutrality rules going into place, and just the threat of regulations made that stop. That was where, I think there was some backbone providers, or maybe it was more CDN networks or whatever, that were providing services that said, hey, Netflix, you're going to have to pay. You can pay to get your traffic prioritized. So something like a Netflix could afford that to go over this backhaul network, whereas, smaller operators or new entrants into that streaming environment, for example, could not. So again, that was frowned upon and was stopped prior to any net neutrality rules. So they're just laying it out here. Most unserved locations per square mile, up to 10 points. These are the kinds of things where it's like, if we weren't prioritizing some of these other things, these would be the things that I would prioritize maybe more, as where are your most unserved locations? In order to ensure the agency prioritizes funding to states with the highest concentration of unserved broadband serviceable locations by percentage and area, projects located in states that meet these criteria will receive 5 or 10 points. For this notice only, these locations contained in the FCC's broadband fabric that do not have access to wired or terrestrial fixed wireless have at least 25 by 3. States eligible for these points were determined by ranking states based upon the following criteria. It talks about the percentage of those UBSLs, unserved broadband service locations, the average area per UBSL in each state, and it mentions some states here, the projects in which 75% of the PFSAs in the state are located, ranked 1 through 5, will receive 10 points, and it mentions Alaska, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, and Wyoming. Projects in which at least 75% of the PFSA is located in states ranked 6 through 10 will receive 5 points, and those are Arkansas, Mississippi, Nevada, South Dakota, and West Virginia. For projects in which 75% is located in more than one of these states, the application will receive the points associated with the highest scoring state. So you could do more than one state and get a percentage higher, I guess, if you cover states in different levels there, or different tiers. It talks about the review process. Let's see if there's anything else. I think there might have been... you got Build America, Buy America in here, other information, footnotes. So that's pretty much it. Well, certainly not it. You can see it's a long document, but I covered some highlights there. So again, also I linked to, so if you're looking at this and you realize, wow, we got to figure out what we need to do on cybersecurity, reach out to us. Again, I linked to this site here. We can do a security assessment for you as a first step, or tell you all about the managed services that we have. Again, we've got, where am I? Over here. So we've got managed, again, Security Operations Center as a service, managed endpoint detection response, email filtering, web filtering. So these are the primary ones that you would be looking at to make sure that your network is protected from cybersecurity threats. So again, that's managed 24 hours a day. You don't need to be, not the kind of thing you need to be looking at. We would be looking at it and making sure that everything's in place for you. So you might want to check that out. So thanks for joining me today. If this was helpful or interesting, if you give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. You see our contact information there. If you do want more information on what we do, you see our email and our phone number there. If you're not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button somewhere down there on YouTube and click the bell to be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot for joining me today. See you next time. Bye-bye.